Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And this week we're breaking down Blanchfield taking on Barber over the UFC Apex Fight Night card. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And as always, the Ground and Pound podcast is going to start off in the early prelims, heading all the way to the main event, giving you our picks, our analysis, and who we think is going to win in each individual fight. And kicking things off, we have got Ardelean taking on Rayanne dos Santos, formerly known as Amanda dos Santos. And I'm going to kick things off. And before I break this one down, I just want to say, what are we doing in 2025? Talking about these two, a 9-7 Ardelean and a 14-8 fighter. I mean, I would rather see John Jones fight accountability than watch these two. You know, Laura Sanko taking on Megan O'Leary fight than these two. But nonetheless, we're going to break it down. And to me, this one, the thing that really stood out to me in this fight here is the size discrepancy. Ardelean looked very, very big in one of her previous fights against Shauna Mama B. Bannon. She comes in, she's a little bit of a weight bully. She likes to get fights to the ground. She's a little bit slow and plodding on the feet. She is very, very popular on TikTok, however, which seems to matter amongst some people nowadays. But I think that's why she's obviously pursuing the MMA career. She knows that that can be an outlet for her social media. So the UFC is obviously very keen to keep her around because she does have a big following. Very, very plodding on the feet. She does throw pretty heavy, pretty hard. However, the problem with her is that because she is plodding on the feet, she struggles to corner her opponent sometimes and be able to land her big shots. She just try to load up on punches. And when you look at Santos is the much more technical fighter in this style matchup. The much better grappler in terms of BJJ. She has a Muay Thai style striking, snappy kicks. She can fight on the outside, much lighter on her feet, but she has actually fought a lower weight class in other organizations. So I do worry about the size discrepancy here amongst the two fighters. I think they'll probably be quite noticeable on the night. And Santos is a 3-1 favorite here, which is kind of crazy to me as well. I definitely think there's a world where Ardelean can mix in grappling and kind of win 2 rounds on top position with her wrestling. But I'm going to ever so slightly lean to Santos here to get it done in the striking. The much more technical fighter, the little sort of counter shots, the right hand that she throws is quite nice. She is the better fighter, but sometimes that doesn't always matter in the women's divisions. But yeah, I'd rather watch a different fight than this one. I'm a little bit of a hater on this one. But Carlos, who do you have in this one? I'm going with Santos.
I'm a hater on this one too. I ended up going with Dos Santos because she has a solid background in BJJ and kickboxing and it looks pretty good. Ardelean, how do we go with that? Ardelean. She's
yeah. I've heard a lot of different pronunciations.
Yeah, she she's very game, and she does sometimes have good top control, but she doesn't really have a means to get you down. And on the feet, she kind of just it's not pretty, but she'll come after you on the feet, just being over aggressive and pressuring you. So I'm okay with that. Like I'm not saying that the 3-1 favorite is a good pick because Dos Santos is not the most technical fighter. Like sometimes she gets caught up in a brawl as well. But I would say that I would take Dos Santos in this one. That's who I'm going with. I at least feel that she can get her on the ground and she can at least look for a submission. She's got some wins by submission as well, so that's a plus for her. What I did see was in her fight against Pooja Tumar, she pretty much went the hardest route she could take and went stand up with her, and she held her own pretty good, but she could have easily just taken her down and submitted her. We saw Mama B do that and win pretty easily after getting the boot to the face. She didn't need to take that. She could have taken it down earlier, but both fighters are I think 0-2 now in the UFC. So this is one of those amazing fights where someone's has got to go, and not in that nice fun way where where we're looking at Bo Nickel. No, this is going to be a nightmare. But I'm taking Dos Santos.
Yeah, that's why I opened this one off. Like, come on, guys. This is the UFC in 2025. We've got a 9-7 taking on 14-8. I don't understand this one. Like I said, there's much better matchups out there, and I agree with Carlos. I think the loser of this one's definitely getting cut. Both women 0-2, and to me, for Santos to be a 3-1 favorite here is crazy. I think there's a world where Ardelean can definitely get the takedowns. I know, just basically chill out on top here. I just don't get this one. Both of us are picking Santos, but I don't think that the odds reflect how close this fight could be. And just to touch on one thing Carlos said, which I think is very true, Santos in her fight against Puja Tamura, she took the path that made the fight the hardest, and she could definitely do that again here as a 3-1 favorite. So keep your money in your wallets for this one. If anything, I would bet Alice Ardelean plus 3.5 just to see if she can win one round. But this fight's terrible. One fight that should be a little bit more entertaining, however, is we have Bolaji Oki taking on MarQuel Mederos. That first name always throws me off. I don't know why. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this matchup?
I ended up going with Bolaji Oki. After winning a split decision against Austin Hubbard, Mederos did. I wasn't very impressed with that because the first 2 rounds, Hubbard was, in my opinion, he was winning that fight. And I think the cut is what saved him in the last round. So if he at least won one of them, the cut saved him. And against someone like Austin Hubbard, not that Austin Hubbard's a bum, that he's washed up, but he's game and he's always ready to get in your face and mix it up. You're a young, up-and-coming guy who's supposed to be athletic, good on the feet and everything. And you let a guy like him take you I'm not saying the distance. Going to decision is not a problem, but you let him push you to your limits. It can do one or two things. Like you either fight down to his level or you actually learn something from that fight. Listening to him in the after fight, the post fight interview and other interviews of him, I don't think he learned anything from that fight. But Oki, he fought a guy, Chris Duncan, who, I think is getting better all the time. I think he went to the American Top Team, and he's working with some killers down there. Yeah. And he's not a bum. That guy he can grapple, he can strike, he can hit. He's a heavy hitter. And Oki got caught with I think he got caught. I can't remember what submission he got caught with.
Guillotine.
But a guillotine, okay, yeah. And that's the thing is, I think he was expecting it to be a stand-up war because Duncan is one of those guys that likes to get mixed in that. But I think in this one, it could be a little slow to begin with because both are kind of counter-strikers. They kind of want to sit back and see what their opponent's going to do, which is why Mederos usually gets caught fighting to the level of the guy that he's fighting, whether he's better or, possibly worse. Like he just goes right to the level of the guy he's fighting. Oki, on the other hand, he is a counter fighter, but what I've seen in his previous fights is if nothing's really going on, he will at least pump the jab a little bit more to get the fight going. And I wish he would add a little bit more to his arsenal, a couple kicks, some elbows. He does have some takedowns, which is great. And just another threat for Mederos, or another opponent. But I just see like the power overwhelming Mederos a little bit. Mederos, though, he's tough. He can hang in there. Because Oki's inexperience, it's not that Mederos is like the worst fighter, and Oki's not the best fighter. So I don't really feel too confident in saying Oki's going to win, but I'm going to take him.
Yeah, I see everything that you see. I see it pretty much the same way. It's tough, really, to me as well, because Mederos doesn't seem to stand out in any way, shape, or form. And I agree with the sentiment that you said, Carlos, that he fights to the level of his competition. But the thing here is, I look at Oki and I think, well, like you said, that guillotine loss there against Chris Duncan isn't necessarily a bad loss. Chris Duncan's obviously performed very well so far inside the UFC, but I would give the athleticism and hand speed advantage to Oki. Obviously coming off of that loss, I think he's going to look to try to get back in the win column here. I like the fact that the pressure. I think whoever's going forward in this fight and being the aggressor is probably going to be the one that ends up winning the fight. And I can rely on Oki to at least come forward and be more aggressive. I think with Mederos, part of the reason I took Austin Hubbard as my dog of the week previously when they fought was I could rely on Hubbard's forward pressure and coming forward. Mederos kind of just lets his opponents kind of walk him down and kind of dictate where the fight goes. And Oki is definitely not shy when it comes to forward pressure and, kind of looking to either initiate, whether it be the grappling or the boxing or the striking, whatever it is. So I'm going to pick Oki here. But again, I'm not confident because both guys like to counter strike. If Oki does pressure forward, Mederos might be able to land a counter shot, maybe an elbow when Oki crashes into the pocket. And we've also seen with Oki as well when he fought Timothy Kawamba that, he did dominate that fight. It was a split decision, but Oki kind of just leaves fights sometimes, in the balance. He throws the jab out there. He doesn't necessarily throw some sort of, like Carlos said with the kicks, you'd like to see a little bit more from him just to kind of really put stamps on rounds. And I think this one could come down to the judges. It has greasy split decision written all over it, but I'm going to pick Oki. I just think the upside's there with the speed, the athleticism. And to me, Mederos kind of, like Carlos said, fights to the level of his competition, but this is one where I'm definitely not going to be betting on it. I think it's definitely got greasy split decision written all over. So 2 for Oki here. And next up, we have the Monkey King, Jordan Leavitt, taking on Kurt Holobaugh. And I'm going to kick this one off. And I'm actually going to go with Jordan Leavitt here. I see a lot of love this week as Kurt Holobaugh as an underdog. Jordan Leavitt, obviously, we know him as a grappler, a heavy sort of wrestling game plan style that he comes in with. Decent kickboxer, not necessarily known for the striking. His game plan is always sort of part and parcel of implementing the grappling, getting the fight to the ground. Submitted recently by Chase Hooper, which is no shame in that. Chase Hooper's looked fantastic to go on and out-grapple a lot of UFC level opponents. But Jordan Leavitt here, the one skill set that I think that he has, obviously being the takedowns, is generally speaking Kurt Holobaugh's weakness, his kryptonite recently. And we've seen in a lot of Kurt Holobaugh's previous fights, Alex Hernandez and I think it was Trey Ogden, we saw him get taken down and controlled on the ground. Very, very suspect takedown defense, and I think that that's going to be the ideal style matchup here for Jordan Leavitt. I think he comes in, I think he shoots for singles, I think he gets him up against the fence here and ultimately gets the takedowns. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be that, he's going to find the submission. I think he's just going to camp out on top, get control time, beat him up on the ground with elbows and strikes, and ultimately win a very confident decision here. And the thing with Leavitt is he does have good control on the ground. He is very good in scrambles. So even if Kurt does, kind of fight the position, I do think that Leavitt's going to have the control here to keep Kurt Holobaugh down. And I've said this in many Kurt Holobaugh breakdowns that, 38 years old. He does have a family gym that him and his wife run. I think he's got something like 6 kids as well that are all part of the classes and training there. He's thinking about life after the UFC and how he can make money, which doesn't fill me with a whole lot of confidence here. I don't think that he comes in and necessarily works heavily on his weaknesses. I think he's kind of over the hill here, and I think this is a good matchup for Leavitt. I don't think Leavitt's a world beater. I just think that his best skill is Kurt Holobaugh's weakness. So I'm going with Leavitt here to get the takedowns. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
Also with Jordan Leavitt, and I like Kurt Holobaugh. You mentioned it already just now. Family man. He seems like a decent person, and I like him. He's a good fighter. He seems like a nice guy, but that has nothing to do with this fight, unfortunately. So it's Leavitt's heavy wrestling game plan, I think, is going to be a huge problem for him. And he's going to get this to the ground. Whether it's submission or some ground and pound, he's going to be able to control him and look for those avenues of victory, because on the feet, he's not going to have a shot at trying to stand with Holobaugh. The other thing is Holobaugh doesn't have, in my belief, the ability to put him out with one shot when Leavitt comes in for a takedown. And if you need the equalizer to stuff someone like Leavitt because he's going to be right on you, you got to catch him before he comes in. And I just don't think Holobaugh has that kind of firepower. So, yeah, in my opinion, I think the youth in the wrestling, even though Holobaugh comes in good shape, he's always usually got good cardio. I just think the youth and the pressure, the wrestling is going to be too much for Holobaugh. So I'm going Leavitt.
Yeah, for sure. And next up, we have Ketlen Vieira taking on Macy Chiasson. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this one?
Um, I'm not, I'm going to take Chiasson over Vieira in this one. It's a little wild to do that, I think, but the reason I'm doing it is because Ketlen Vieira is she's supposed to have good wrestling. There was a point where she was able to take down all of her opponents, but I don't know if it's just maybe she was on a roll then. She was working a lot more wrestling, and that was her bread and butter. But right now, she's kind of in love with the stand-up, and in a couple of fights where she should have used a lot of wrestling, she didn't, and she ended up not getting the victory out of there. And whether or not she couldn't get the opponent down wasn't even an issue. It was the fact that she didn't even try to go for a takedown, and that's supposed to be your thing. And the other thing was, what was the name of that girl from the PFL? Kayla Harrison. She, yeah, was able to get easy takedowns and kind of like I think she got a double leg on Vieira. So I was like, how are you letting someone? And it not that it was the sloppiest double leg, but it wasn't the best. And I was like, how'd you let that happen? She didn't try to peel the arms off. She didn't try to change a level. She didn't try to sprawl. She just let her take her down. And it's either is Harrison that strong or is Caitlin, is she not training wrestling as much now because she's trying to get her stand-up involved? And if that's the case, Chiasson being the taller, longer fighter, and she does move a lot, that's going to be a huge problem for Vieira. And Vieira loves to load on her punches, so Chiasson should see that coming from a mile away. So I'm going with Macy, and from what I looked at, I thought she was the underdog in this one, but I think this is a lot closer. How much of an underdog was she?
Macy opened as a slight underdog. She was plus 100. The fight's now a pick 'em at minus 110, okay. Minus 110. So it reflects exactly what you're saying about the fight being close.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even. So yeah. Well, I'll go with her on this one.
I'm going to go dissension. I'm going to go Ketlen Vieira here. I've always viewed Ketlen Vieira, and I didn't disagree with anything that Carlos said. I think this is actually a pretty tough one to call. Both women, I think, can be very untrustworthy. I've always viewed Ketlen Vieira as kind of the gatekeeper to the title. She's always kind of been in that 1 to 2 sort of range, kind of defending the who's going to fight the champion next sort of position. And when she fought against Kayla Harrison, I don't necessarily chalk that up to a bad performance. I think that Kayla Harrison is the rightful champion of this division. This division is terrible. Juliana Pena should not be the champion, but that's another story for a different day. It just goes to show you how bad the division is when Juliana Pena is the champion, and her opponent that's coming in to face her is going to be like a 5-1 favorite over her. You don't necessarily have to be that good in this division. And Ketlen Vieira, I think the reason that she's been able to get to the top is because she bullies a lot of the girls. She gets them up against the fence. If she doesn't get takedowns, she throws a lot of knees and elbows in the clinch. She does get some of her opponents down, and she's very heavy on top, very big girl for the division. Her striking looks like she has like holding weights in her hands. Everything looks very slow. Everything looks like it's in slow motion, very sluggish, very telegraphed. I think if she comes in here and tries to bully Macy Chiasson, I think she can have success. I think this is going to be a terrible fight from a viewing standpoint. A lot of clinching, a lot of up against the fence clinching. Maybe if someone gets on top, there's not a lot of damage going on. And to me, Macy Chiasson, I've just never been able to trust her inside the UFC. I think she's very inconsistent. A few years ago, she was talking about retiring. She comes back and she's able to get a doctor stoppage cut over Mayra Bueno Silva in a fight that she was losing in the first round to the striking of Mayra Bueno Silva, which Mayra Bueno Silva's not even really known for. She got on top and landed one elbow, which was probably the best shot of the whole entire fight. Cut Silva open. They stopped it for a doctor stoppage there for the cut, and she didn't necessarily look that impressive. And some of her other wins against Pani Kianzad, not necessarily a higher level woman who in that division either, but that's kind of this division overall. So I'm going to go Ketlen Vieira. I think that she gets back in the win column after her loss against Kayla Harrison here. And I think that she can just bully her up against the fence. But to be honest with you, whichever way this fight goes, I wouldn't be surprised. I just expect it to kind of be a snoozer, unfortunately. And next up, we have Trevin Giles stepping in on about a week's notice here to fill in for taking on Andreas Gustafsson. And this one, to me, I thought this one was quite interesting because Trevin Giles is the slight underdog, as you can obviously expect here, obviously stepping in on a week's notice. But Andreas Gustafsson is a big step down in competition for some of the people that Giles has been facing. Obviously, he's facing guys like Carlos Prates, for example. He's been getting finished in a few of those higher level matchups. So this is a big step down in competition, so we'll see how he handles it. But Gustafsson is definitely going to bring the fight to him. For anybody that hasn't watched tape on Gustafsson, he is an absolute wild man. The guy comes out, flying knees, just swinging wild, as Arnold would say, shoot from the hip. Like, that's pretty much how he comes out, swinging, shooting from the hip. He likes to get into the clinch. He throws elbows, knees in the clinch, and his striking is not technical whatsoever. And even Gustafsson comes out and says on his UFC Contender Series debut, he says, I'm not technical at all. He knows what he is. He just comes into the clinch and just lands elbows and constant pressure. And my worry here for Giles is kind of been that people play kind of the tit for tat sparring game with him, and then all of a sudden they kind of realize Giles doesn't have anything that they throw back that's dangerous. He kind of just has a very nice jab, and that's all that we really see from him. And I just think that here with Gustafsson, he's going to make this a brawl. He's going to make this a fight. I haven't seen enough from Giles to get the respect from most of his opponents, let alone a guy that's as aggressive here as Gustafsson. So give me Gustafsson. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a finish. I think it probably will be late round 2. You have to expect maybe the cardio might be a factor here for Giles. This fight is actually at a catch weight of 180 pounds. So maybe Giles's chin holds up because he doesn't have to necessarily make the weight cut. Maybe that affects Gustafsson coming in a little bit heavier with his cardio. We'll see, but staying away from this fight from a betting perspective, I think. But Gustafsson here all the way, late finish here for me. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I ended up taking Gustafsson in this one. I was going to say as well, I don't even remember right now if you said you took him.
Yeah, I'm taking Gustafsson. Yeah.
Okay, and the reason I'm taking him is, what I didn't really see anything too impressive about Gustafsson. He just kind of likes to get in close, kind of clinch it if he has to, and throw a lot of knees, elbows, and when he's outside, he just throws random punches, random kicks, and if something lands, it lands. But he's in your face, and he's trying to bully you around the cage. And although he doesn't look impressive, the one thing that he does do impressive is that he's coming forward, and in his mind, he's just trying to hurt you. Giles, he looks the part. He has good movement. Sometimes he's very slick on his feet, good boxing, decent striking. Doesn't mix up his tools too much, but he does look good at times, and then sometimes as soon as the pressure comes on and the opponent turns it up, he tends to fall apart. And I feel that mentally Gustafsson is going to push him to a point where he's going to fall apart. He's going to make some bit of a mistake, and he's going to capitalize on it, because even though he's going to make this fight ugly, that's Gustafsson, that's where he wants it, and it's going to be in his favor. So I think at some point he's going to pressure him, and he's just going to out-physical him somewhere in the clinch and somewhere standing up. And I think he gets I actually think he's going to get Giles out of there. But, I went with Gustafsson.
Yeah, I think he will as well. I think the pressure will be too much for him here. I don't think he can get the respect, Giles, of Gustafsson here. So 2 for Gustafsson, a late finish for me. And that brings us to our featured prelim, guys. We have Jafel, the Pasta Filho, taking on Allan Nascimento. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Battle of the Brazilians. Who you got?
I went with Filho. I think that's how you say the name, right? Mm-hmm. Filho, he's got decent stand-up. He's got a good submission game. Majority of his victories have come by submission as well. Nascimento, I think almost all of them, except for a handful, have come by submission, which is unusual for a guy out of Shoot the Box. They love to mix it up, and they love to hurt you on the feet. And for the most part, if they can hurt you on the feet standing, when they get you down, they like to hurt you on the ground with elbows and punches and everything. So it's very interesting that he's very much submission first. He doesn't even use the striking to get submissions, like to get you down. He just kind of finds a way to get inside your punches and gets close and then gets a takedown. Doesn't even have very good wrestling to get you to the mat, but somehow he gets it there in some of his past fights. With Filho, what's interesting about it is, I feel that he's got enough on the ground to defend a lot of these submissions if it happens to get there. I also feel that he's got enough on the ground. He also competes in a lot of grappling tournaments as well, submission grappling tournaments. So he's got the ability to do the exact same thing to Nascimento as well. I think he also has the ability to hurt him on the feet because even though his stand-up isn't great, he's willing to mix it up. And that part right there is something that Nascimento doesn't do. And if he does, I just haven't seen it against a higher level of fighter. So now it just comes down to who's going to be able to get this to the mat. And one thing about Nascimento is that when he fought Ulanbekov, Ulanbekov used his wrestling to just smother the submissions. And the fight didn't stay standing very long, and if it did, Ulanbekov's a lot better on the feet as well. So that's what I think is going to be the difference maker that Filho brings to this, is that he doesn't mind mixing this up, and he can take a shot. So if Nascimento is to throw something back with some authority, I think Filho is going to be in it still, and he's going to be in his face. So I ended up going with Filho.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button here for the Dog of the Week on the Ground and Pound podcast. Jafel, the Pasta Filho, Dog of the Week, and I like him wherever this fight goes. I put a lot of time last week into researching this fight, and Allan Nascimento is coming off over a 2-year layoff, 2 years and 3 months, I believe it is. He's had multiple injuries, multiple illnesses. This fight was meant to be scheduled back last year. Obviously, Jafel Filho hasn't competed since. He's in just a little bit under a year. He competed in a grappling tournament, a grappling match against Amir Albazi, who's obviously a very credentialed wrestler. He was able to beat Albazi in that, so obviously trying to stay active with his grappling. And wherever this fight goes, I like Jafel. He's obviously a born finisher on the feet and on the ground. I think he's the more complete fighter all the way around. As Carlos touched, Allan Nascimento obviously likes to get the submission. One of 26 fights, he's got a KO. Most of his fights do come by decision or by submission, mostly by submission. And I just don't think that's going to be on the table here for Jafel. With the long layoffs, the injuries, we don't know how he's going to look. Shooter box fighters, generally speaking, do come out very aggressive, but all the aggression, I think, is going to be on the side of Filho here. Filho likes to come forward, and I think with the long layoff, as I said in my keys to victory for the Dog of the Week video, I think if he comes in here early and just pressures Nascimento, he might be able to get him out of there early with the ring rust. I like the way that Filho rips to the body and then comes upstairs. I think that's a great game plan here to mix in the striking. I think out of the two, I think he's the much more heavy-handed fighter. I think if Jafel wants to mix in the wrestling, he definitely could do that. Like Carlos said, Tagir Ulanbekov was able to hold Nascimento down for multiple rounds. But I think the path to victory here is keep this one on the feet. Jafel has the power on the feet, and if it does go to the ground, don't get caught up in playing jiu-jitsu. Both guys very, very credentialed, but Jafel throw some ground and pound. I think when he gets in dominant positions, which he will, just land strikes, do damage. I think that is the path to victory here for him. That's why I made him the Dog of the Week, plus 140. Jafel, the Pasta Filho, getting it done as the Dog of the Week. And that brings us to the main card, ladies and gentlemen. We have Zach Reese taking on Dusko Todorovic. And Carlos and I in the past have talked about Dusko Todorovic, so I'm interested to get his take on this one. But I'll let him break this one down. Who you got in this matchup, Carlos?
Well, before I get into that one, what I'm gonna say is, Reese is dangerous early in the fight. Okay, and he brings a lot of pop, and he'll take you down too, and he'll ground and pound you if he can early to get you out of there. He's got a lot of first round finishes. I think some early second round finishes as well. With Todorovic, the one of the things is, I don't know, he's just a slow starter, and he allows himself to get hurt early in a fight. And that part right there, when you see it, that's just a horrible mix, because when he loses, it's usually in the first round. I think he has one second round loss by KO, but first rounds are all by KO. And that's where I think that this mix is going to be bad. Now, he has been rocked before. He gets rocked in the first round, but he's able to outlast, keep working, and then later on get the decision. I don't know if he gets that with Reese, based on the fact that Reese has got the height advantage, he's got the reach advantage. He's going to touch him before he gets to him anyway. And with Dusko Todorovic, the thing that gets me about him is he's incredibly talented. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a very slick ground game, and in round 2, after he's warmed up, his stand up is always pretty slick, pretty smooth, and he's always light on his feet. He's bouncing around, he's moving. So I don't know. Maybe it's a mental thing. Like, I don't know. Maybe he's just really a slow starter, and that's what makes him look bad early in the fight. That makes him look vulnerable. But some guys, there are guys that need to get hit to get going in fights. It's just, you can't get hit in a fight to get going. If that hit is going to put you out. But yeah, he kind of reminds me of Allan, the talent Belcher. Belcher was one hell of a talented guy. Obviously, that was his nickname. But he was skilled. He was probably more well-rounded than everybody that he fought. But it's just, if he showed up one day and he was ready to go, he looked like a world beater. And then some days he showed up and he just looked like an average bloke in the gym, we'll say. And the one thing that gets me is, he's maybe it's, if he went back to the regional scene, I feel that he would completely dominate everybody, in the circuit. But once you get in the octagon and you got the lights on and the fans, sometimes that does something to your psyche. And case in point, I'm just saying, in short, I went with Reese, and I just can't trust Dusko to get out of the first round.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. I can't poke holes in any of that argument, to be honest. And I agree with you. I think Dusko Todorovic, I think he's very talented, and he's just a guy that just can't get over the hump. And that does not mean to me that Zach Reese by any means is a confident pick here. And I am going to pick Zach Reese for the same reasons that Carlos said. I just can't really trust Dusko Todorovic's chin at this point in his career. He's been finished multiple times early in round 1. But I think out of the two, I think he's the cleaner striker. I think overall, I think he's the faster striker as well. Zach Reese is kind of plodding on the feet. He does pressure. He does throw nice strikes, but you can see with him that he is a little bit of a step slow. He is a little bit of a plodder. He lacks athleticism, and he will play jiu-jitsu off of his back. He has those long limbs. He throws up triangles and arm bars very, very well. But it's kind of hard to trust either guy in this matchup. So for Reese to be, I think he opened as something like a 3-1 favorite is crazy to me that we can trust Zach Reese at those odds. The line has kind of come in a little bit. He's like minus 250 now. But I am going to go with Reese. I just don't necessarily trust Dusko Todorovic, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he does pull off the upset here. If he can kind of get out of round 1, kind of stay a little bit more composed. I definitely think that over the course of the 3 rounds, he can have success and find the chin of Reese. Obviously, Reese does have the height and reach advantage in this matchup, which might be enough for him to just find the chin. And I would just explain this fight like if you took 2 panes of glass and laid them side by side and threw rocks at them, it's whichever one decides to break first. I just think that Dusko at this point in his career, I think his pane of glass breaks first. So I think his chin's gone, and not confident because Zach Reese is the same way. But give me Zach Reese here. Definitely not betting on this fight. Maybe fight doesn't go the distance, whatever those odds are. And that brings us to Dustin Jacoby taking on Bruno Lopes. And this one's interesting to me. I'm interested to take what Carlos has to say about this one. But Bruno Lopes came into the UFC, and he was a big underdog against Giles in that fight, the K1 kickboxer, and I was very impressed with his performance. He was able to get the wrestling going, and he's one of these fighters that when you watch him on tape, nothing really stands out. He doesn't necessarily look like a world beater. He doesn't look like a striker in by any means. He doesn't look like he can wrestle or push a pace, but he did a fantastic job in that fight of being able to get Giles to the ground, clinch him up against the fence, and implement a heavy wrestling game plan for all 3 rounds. So hats off to him as the big underdog to coming in here and doing that. And Dustin Jacoby, 37 years old, kickboxer, fought against, I believe it's Alex Pereira in the kickboxing world. He is very credentialed in that department. Good takedown defense, fights on the outside, nice striking in terms of the hands and the feet. Nice counter right hand that he landed against Vitor Petrino in that fight. He was able to get the knockout. But I think, honestly, with Lopes, I don't think that he's going to be able to get Jacoby to the ground. Obviously, in the apex with the small cage, I do think that suits Lopes if he wants to mix in the wrestling here. I just don't think that he's going to be able to get Dustin Jacoby down. And we've seen in Las Vegas in the apex that the judges don't necessarily value the grappling as much in the clinching against the fence. I think Jacoby here is the better, quicker striker. I think the hands and the feet are going to be a little bit too much here for Lopes, but it's hard to trust 37 years old, coming towards the latter stages of his career that, definitely not a confident pick here for Jacoby, but I think that the striking, the movement on the outside is going to be too much, and the speed with the striking is going to be too much. But I wouldn't be surprised if Lopes is able to pull off the upset. He does have good striking. He does have good wrestling, but I'm going to go with Jacoby here to get it done, to fighting on the outside as a kickboxer. Carlos, who you got?
Well, I don't know if you remembered, but I ended up taking Lopes, I think, in that last one.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, I did think he had a chance of winning. And one of the reasons being was I watched some of his fights, and I saw that if one thing wasn't working, he went to the next thing. Now, Dustin Jacoby's he's a good kickboxer, okay? We know that. But, his grappling isn't the best and his wrestling isn't the best, but he does enough to stay off the ground. Lopes, what's very impressive about him is he's incredibly slow. He probably hits good for light heavyweight. He has not one bit of explosive ability whatsoever. But what he does is he looks for the most advantageous path to victory in his favor. And what he doesn't want to get caught in a slugfest. I watched a couple of his fights before, and I've seen him. If something's not working, he'll at least try something else. And that's why I'm going to take him in this one. I'm not taking him in this one because, he beat that guy. What was his name? Magomed Getsulov, whatever. Getsulov. I'm taking him because I think that out of the two, he can change something up. Now, Jacoby hits him and sticks him, puts him out. That's fine. But I believe Lopes is durable enough to take a little bit of punishment and find another route to victory. So I'm going with Lopes.
Yeah, I flip-flopped on this one a little bit because I did think that Lopes kind of surprised me a little bit, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he's able to pull this one off. But like I said earlier, 37 years old, Justin Jacoby's tough to trust sometimes. Next up, we have a fight scheduled that both opponents obviously had different opponents. We have Billy Ray Goff taking on Ramiz Brahimaj, and both guys had different opponents. I believe Brahimaj was supposed to fight Oban Elliott, and that fight fell through because Oban Elliott didn't have had visa issues. Billy Ray Goff was supposed to fight, I'm trying to think the guy's name, is it Kai? And unfortunately, he had visa issues, so the UFC mashed this one together. I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
In this matchup, I kind of flip-flopped twice on this one, and I ended up going with Billy Ray Goff because I like saying the name. I do like the Billy Ray Goff name, but I ended up going with Billy Ray Goff because, he has good movement. He doesn't like to stay in one spot all the time. And in his movement, he does like to circle around his opponent. Now, his wrestling, haven't really seen too much of it. He doesn't offensively use it. Defensively, he's tried to use it. On the regional scene, when guys try to go for him, it's very easy for him to avoid it. And I'm thinking he's at least decent, okay? Maybe not UFC level takedown defense, but I think the movement adds another layer of takedown defense. The other thing is he's very loose and relaxed on the feet. The strikes come out very effortlessly. He doesn't have a lot of sting on it, but as long as you're getting hit, he's doing some damage. And one thing I'm not a big fan of is he allows himself to get stung every once in a while. Now, I haven't seen him hurt, but sometimes he puts one hand up, kind of the Philly shell. Puts one hand up, one covering the body, and he likes to roll with it, which is a horrible idea in MMA, especially when you're that close. And the gloves are that small. Anyone can put you out at any time. Now, Brahimaj, he can stand up and fight. I think he's a little tighter, but he can still stand and fight. And obviously, like Travis Lutter, student, his jiu-jitsu, and he's got a lot of wins by submission. He's very well educated on the ground. His wrestling, decent enough to get fights to the ground when he needs to. But he's also suffered some injuries too, and in his last couple of fights, he's had some issues taking the guys down as well. Against lower level, he was able to take them down, no problem, get the fights done. So I ended up going with Billy Ray Goff because I think that his movement is going to pose an issue. I think Brahimai needs you to be at least in one spot to be able to take you down. Brahimai still pretty dangerous just because of the fact that Goff keeps his hands down when he's in close sometimes, and he likes to roll with the punches. I don't know how much stand-up experience he has. I think that's a horrible idea in MMA, but if he does it, he's been getting away with it. Yeah, either way, I'm going to pick him. I'm going to take him, and I think he can get this done.
Yeah, one thing I was interested about this particular fight is to get Carlos's take on, how close he felt the matchup was. And obviously you heard him say at the start there, I kind of flip-flopped on this one. And that's kind of what I did initially. And I was very surprised to see the opening betting line for this as Billy Goff opened as a 5-1 favorite. I thought that was absolutely crazy. That's not to say that I think that Billy Ray Goff's not a good fighter. I think that, I did expect him to be the favorite in this matchup, but not that big of a favorite. That line's come in heavily. I think he's something like a 3-1, almost 4-1 favorite now, but still, I don't agree with that line. And I'm actually going to take Raheem Brahimaj here. I noticed in his last fight against Mickey Gall, he didn't necessarily he wasn't necessarily known for his hands and his boxing, and he was able to put Mickey Gall out, and he's kind of shown a little bit of a verge of improvement to me in that fight. He looked like he kind of improved technically, and even the commentary team was saying, look how comfortable he looks on the feet. He's throwing things in combination. He just looked a more complete fighter. And we obviously know, as Carlos said, high level wrestler, high level grappler. He's been working with Bilal Muhammad over in Chicago. His BJJ coach, like you said, is Luda. The same coach as Kevin Holland, who's obviously a very, very good BJJ practitioner. And I think that Brahimaj might surprise a few people. I think he might go on a little bit of a run here. As Carlos touched upon earlier, he did have some serious injuries. He had a serious spinal injury where he was obviously not able to train for a while. He had a ruptured tumor in his eye as well, which he had to have surgery on and have fixed as well. So that's why I think we saw such an impressive, well put together Mickey Gall fight in his last fight where he was able to get the knockout, because I think things are just kind of clicking into place now for him, and he's able to kind of come in now with a full training camp, healthy, and look at his best. And I think this is actually a much better matchup for Brahimaj against Billy Ray Goff than it is against Oban Elliott. Oban Elliott's very, very tough to take down. And on the feet, I think with Billy Ray Goff, he's going to get in Brahimaj's face, which I think he's going to put the fight to him. And we saw in that Mickey Gall fight, when he lets his hands go in the pocket, he throws nice uppercuts, nice overhand rights, and he can knock people out. He does have underrated power. So for him to be such a big underdog here, I think is kind of crazy. Just to talk about Billy Ray Goff, his fight against Trey Waters that he lost, constant forward pressure, but he does get touched a lot. Obviously, that guy in Trey Waters is an absolute freak for the division in terms of his height and reach. So obviously, that is why he's able to touch the much smaller fighter here in Billy Ray Goff's chin. But I think Brahimaj is going to get this done. I think that he's going to surprise a few people. I haven't seen enough from Billy Ray Goff's wrestling here to suggest that he's going to be able to keep Brahimaj off of him. And I like the fact that he went and trained with Bilal Muhammad to work on his wrestling. And we also know that he's got the submissions in his back pocket. I think we're going to see a resurgence here from Brahimaj. So give me the big underdog to pull off the upset. And that brings us to the co-main event, ladies and gentlemen. We have Ludovic Klein taking on Mateusz Gamrot. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in the main event?
Well, I ended up taking Gamrot, and Klein he's got very good stand-up. And when I say very good, he's got good movement. He's slick. He doesn't load on anything. He's the way you would like an MMA fighter to fight, standing on their feet. Okay, but the thing is, he does have he apparently has good jiu-jitsu. I haven't seen a lot of it. I have seen him take guys down. I have seen him implement a little control on the ground while he's ground and pounding, but I haven't seen too many like finishes by submission. But what I have seen from Gamrot is the fact that if you want to go down, you feel comfortable going down on the ground with him, he's going to control you on the ground. And stand-up wise, terrible. He's absolutely horrible. Once Dan Hooker was able to stuff a takedown, he was in a lot of trouble. So, and Dan Hooker is not somebody where it's like, oh, his stand-up's terrible. No, his stand-up is good, and he was in a lot of trouble. So if he fights somebody whose stand-up is bad, he's still in a lot of trouble because Gamrot's terrible. But Ludwig, if he can keep this on the feet, and that's the if, is he can do a lot of damage and do exactly what Hooker did and get that victory. But I think Gamrot's going to be able to smother that because I think somewhere Klein has that ability to be like, you know what? I don't care if I get taken down. I can compete with him on the ground. And I just see that, and I see that Gamrot is going to exploit that on him. Now, can he pull off a big submission that Gamrot doesn't see coming? I find that highly unlikely. Gamrot's working with animals all the time, and they're throwing submissions at him every day. You're not going to catch him with something that he hasn't seen. But I do think that if Klein starts to win this fight, it's probably going to be in the third round. By that time, Gamrot's won 2 rounds of just snuggling on the ground, and he's going to get the decision.
Yeah, I last week when I was looking for Dog of the Week to make the highlight reel tape, if you haven't checked it out, Dog of the Week, I'll leave a link in the description. But I was debating whether to go with Jafel or whether to go with Ludovic Klein. Ludovic Klein here, I like him in this matchup, man. I saw with Gamrot, like Carlos mentioned in the Dan Hooker fight, that once Hooker was able to keep the fight standing, that he caused Gamrot a lot of problems. And I do think Carlos has been a little harsh on Gamrot's striking. I do agree that his striking does suck, but it has improved since he's been in the UFC, but it does suck. And I think Ludovic Klein here, standing southpaw, I think that the high kick, the left body kick, is going to be very much a weapon that he can use here to blast to the body of Gamrot. We've seen Dan Hooker go to the body against Gamrot and really slow him down with his gas tank. He also gets very tired in fights because of the heavy wrestling game plan that he has. So going to the body and kind of going upstairs and kind of mixing in those two weapons there for Ludovic, I definitely think would be a good weapon and a good tool for him to use against Gamrot. But one thing I always look at, especially when you have striker versus grappler matchup and one person that wants to take somebody down, is how does that striker, do when it comes to the takedown defense? And when you look through Ludovic Klein's record and people that he's fought, he actually has a 90% takedown defense rate. So very, very tough to hold down. He can mix in his own wrestling. You saw in the Roosevelt Roberts fight in his last fight, took the path of least resistance against the taller, quicker striker in Roosevelt Roberts and was able to implement the wrestling. So I think that he keeps this one on the feet. I think the striking is night and day Klein here. And I like him here as the betting underdog. I almost made him the dog of the week. I ended up going with Jafel, but I actually thought that Ludovic Klein is definitely a very, very credentialed striker and the better striker in this matchup. And with the takedown defense at 90%, you have to think that he's going to be able to keep this fight standing for most of the fight. I'm sure, Gamrot might be able to pull off some sort of high-level takedown here, snatch, single, whatever the case may be, and be able to get this fight to the ground. But I just think Klein's not going to accept bottom position, and he knows that on the feet he's going to have the advantage. So give me Klein here. He's definitely going to be in the best bets video this week as an underdog we're going to bet on. But I almost liked him for the dog of the week. I think he gets it done. And that brings us to the main event, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast as we break down Erin Blanchfield taking on Macy Barber. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in the main event?
I ended up going with Macy Barber. Macy is she's aggressive. She swings. It's not really wild, but she's controlled on what she does, but she just wings everything, like her kicks, her punches, her elbows. She just lets it fly, and if something connects, it connects. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. I wish she would be a little bit more accurate against someone like Blanchfield, because sometimes she does some of her best work. I'm talking about Barber. In the clinch when she's got her opponent up against the cage and she's throwing some knees and she's throwing some elbows, and the problem being is if you're closing the distance with Blanchfield, that's kind of giving her close to something that she wants to do, is to get you to the ground, because she doesn't have great wrestling, so she has to at least clinch you up to get you down, look for a foot sweep or something. The issue being with Blanchfield is She's not really the most athletic type person. And Barber is just very big for the weight class, and she likes to bully. And her cardio is usually there. She's never like out of it. She's always game. I don't know if it's just the youth that pushes her through, but she's always able to. She doesn't look like she's gassing that bad, and she scrambles pretty decent in her last couple of fights. Hasn't had to scramble much, but she does scramble a little bit better, and she's able to get back to her feet when taken down, especially after the Modafferi fight, and she was controlled completely. The key is to make this fight ugly. Blanchfield, not a great striker, very good on the ground. Doesn't really have the wrestling means to get it down there, but the problem is if someone's going to make this fight ugly standing up, how are you going to have enough finesse to get the fight down? Like I said, the one thing I don't like about Barber as well is as she's striking, she just comes forward and she could probably like just kind of lean into a throw if timed correctly. I'm going to say I don't see that happening. And if it does happen, I do see her scrambling for a better position and getting the points on aggression. She may not do a lot of damage, but I think she's going to get the points for being aggressive and trying to bully Blanchfield around the ring. And so, yeah, those are my keys to victory for Barber. I think if she could just bully her, keep Blanchfield's back against the cage and scramble well, I think she's going to do good in this match. Yep.
Yeah, a little dissension here. I'm actually going to go there in Blanchfield, New Jersey's own Blanchfield. And I've not necessarily been impressed with Blanchfield's striking. Let's get the negatives out the way. I agree with Carlos. She's not necessarily the best striker. Obviously got a lot of 5-round experience now. When she fought against Manon Farrow, I believe she also fought against Rose Namajunas in the 5-round fight. I want to say it was 5 rounds. So she's getting up there in terms of her pace, her pressure, her cardio. Definitely doesn't have the wrestling to get fights to the ground where she shines, on the ground with her BJJ, high-level BJJ practitioner. But one thing that she is very tough. She will get in people's face. She will make fights a dog fight. She's definitely somebody that isn't scared to get hit. She'll, kind of jump into the pocket and throw, a big right hand, or, she will make things a dogfight. And even in that Manon Farrow fight, Manon Farrow being the much more technical striker, the much higher level striker, she was kind of getting her licks in as well. She was able to land on Farrow. She didn't get put out in that fight. She does, kind of stick to game plan. She obviously does look for takedowns. And I think she might be able to get 1 or 2 here against Barber. And I think with Barber, I think that, she is somebody who is very, very aggressive, like Carlos said. You saw in the Amanda Ribas fight that once she does get into dominant positions on top, she's not necessarily looking for the choke. She will literally do exactly what our podcast suggests. She is all about the ground and pound, so I love her for that. She was able to beat Amanda Ribas up on the ground, big elbows, cutting her open. She's very vicious, very aggressive. I just think here that... on the feet, I think both women are going to kind of have their moments, but I think where it comes to the ground, I think Blanchfield's going to have the success. I think Barber's tough, don't get me wrong. Obviously not been finished. She is very, very aggressive and tough herself, but I just kind of think that Blanchfield's going to be able to out-tough her here. Smaller cage as well in the apex, which I think is going to help her be able to get the takedowns here. And I also think as well, we've seen in the past where, Blanchfield will stick to that game plan up against the fence, holding women up against the fence, trying to shoot in on the legs, coming upstairs with an elbow and a couple of shots, then reshooting again. And I trust her cardio, whereas we've seen with Macy Barber, we haven't necessarily seen her pushed later into fights and how her cardio is held up. So and one thing I did want to say about Barber too is, there was a couple of years back, I think it was like 2 years now, that she actually had a bone infection, and she was talking about retiring, which is obviously she's been able to recover from. So she might come in here, kind of feeling a little bit healthier, a little bit better now. She's got a few more camps and a few more fights under her belt. But I think Erin Blanchfield is kind of that higher level. She's been fighting the higher level women. So I just trust New Jersey's own to get it done in the main event on Saturday. And that's everything, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Full card breakdown here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And if you enjoyed the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we let you know what's coming. We have the best bets for the UFC Fight Night. Blanchfield taking on Macy Barber coming out to you later on this week. We have the Dog of the Week video, which I'll leave for Jafel Filho in the comments section. And before we wrap things up, Carlos, is there anything that you want to say to the people?
Just hope you guys are enjoying this content, and please like and subscribe.
Yep, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.